The baby was dying and Ethan Blackwood could do nothing but watch. He stood behind the glass wall of the sterile medical wing built inside his penthouse, his hands pressed flat against the cold surface, staring at the tiny figure lying motionless in the incubator. Tubes ran from her fragile arms. Monitors beeped rhythmically, tracking a heartbeat that grew weaker with each passing hour. The best neonatologists in the country surrounded her, whispering urgently to one another, their faces tight with frustration. They had tried everything. Every formula. Every feeding tube. Every experimental treatment money could buy. Nothing worked. His daughter refused to eat. She refused to live. Ethan Blackwood was a man who destroyed empires before breakfast. At 34 he had built a tech conglomerate worth $17 billion by crushing anyone who stood in his way. Competitors feared him. Politicians courted him. The world bent to his will with a single phone call. But none of that mattered now. Because for the first time in his life, money was worthless. Power was meaningless. And he was completely, utterly helpless. Dr. Harrison, the lead specialist, stepped out of the nursery and pulled off his surgical mask. His expression said everything Ethan didn't want to hear. "Mr. Blackwood, we need to discuss." "No." Ethan's voice was ice. "You discuss solutions. Not failures." "Sir, I understand your frustration, but your daughter's condition is deteriorating rapidly. She's rejecting all forms of artificial nutrition. Her body is shutting down. Without intervention." "Then intervene. We've tried everything." Dr. Harrison's voice cracked slightly. "There's nothing left to try." Ethan turned slowly, his gray eyes burning with rage barely contained beneath a cold exterior. "Then you're fired. Get out. Send in someone who can actually do their job." Dr. Harrison hesitated, then nodded quietly and walked away. Ethan knew it was irrational. The doctor wasn't incompetent. The situation was simply impossible. But rationality had abandoned him 3 days ago when his daughter was born premature and struggling. 3 days of watching her slip away while a parade of experts shook their heads and offered nothing but sympathy and statistics. 3 days of becoming someone he didn't recognize. Someone desperate, someone afraid. He returned to the glass, pressing his forehead against it. Inside, a nurse adjusted an 4-line. The baby didn't even cry anymore. She had stopped crying yesterday. That's when Ethan knew she was giving up. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. The world outside these walls continued spinning, demanding his attention, but he couldn't care less. Let his empire crumble. Let his competitors celebrate. Nothing mattered except the tiny life fading behind that glass. 30 floors below, in the service quarters of the penthouse, Maya Collins folded bed sheets with mechanical precision. Her hands moved automatically while her mind drifted somewhere far away, to a place where pain didn't reach her anymore. She had perfected this numbness over the past 2 months. Wake up. Work. Sleep. Repeat. Feel nothing. Remember nothing. Survive. The other staff avoided her. They whispered when she passed, calling her the ghost because she never spoke unless spoken to, never smiled, never engaged. Maya preferred it that way. Invisibility was safety. Silence was survival. She moved through Mr. Blackwood's penthouse like a shadow, cleaning rooms, washing dishes, changing linens, existing without truly being alive. Her room was barely larger than a closet, tucked away in a corner where no one would notice her. A narrow bed. A small dresser. A single window overlooking the city lights that never seemed to sleep. Maya didn't mind. She didn't deserve more. Not after what happened. Not after she failed. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Chin, appeared in the doorway. "Maya, I need you to take the night shift in the main residence. Mr. Blackwood has medical staff working around the clock, and they've requested additional cleaning support." Maya nodded without speaking. "And Maya?" Mrs. Chen's voice softened slightly. "Stay out of the nursery wing. Mr. Blackwood has been unstable. He fired another doctor today. Security is on edge. Just do your work and don't draw attention." Maya nodded again. Mrs. Chin left and Maya finished folding the sheets before heading upstairs. The penthouse was massive, 12,000 square feet of cold marble floor-to-ceiling windows, and modern art that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Maya moved through it silently, her cleaning cart rolling quietly across polished floors. She could hear voices from the medical wing, tense, urgent conversations that echoed down the hallway. She stayed away, focusing on the living room, the kitchen, the guest bathrooms. Places where she wouldn't be noticed. But then she heard it. A sound so faint she almost missed it beneath the hum of machinery and muffled conversations. A baby's cry. Not loud. Not strong. Just a weak, desperate whimper that pierced straight through the walls Maya had built around her heart. Her hands froze on the cleaning cloth. Her breath caught. And suddenly she was back in that hospital room 2 months ago, hearing the same sound. The last sound her own daughter made before the doctors took her away and told Maya she was gone. Maya's legs moved before her mind could stop them. She abandoned her cart and walked toward the medical wing, her heart pounding, her body trembling. She knew she shouldn't. Mrs. Chen's warning echoed in her head. But that cry, that desperate, fading cry, pulled her forward like an invisible thread connecting her to something she thought she'd lost forever. She reached the nursery entrance. Through the window she could see the incubator, the machines, the tiny figure inside. Security guards stood nearby, but they were focused on the doctors, not on a maid in the shadows. Maya pressed closer to the glass, her breath fogging the surface. The baby was so small. So pale. So alone. And suddenly, Maya understood something that made her chest tighten with certainty. The baby wasn't sick. She was refusing. Refusing the cold tubes, the artificial formulas, the sterile environment. She was starving not from lack of food but from lack of connection. Lack of warmth. Lack of someone who understood what she needed. Maya's hand moved to her chest, where her body still remembered what it had been preparing for. Where instinct still pulsed beneath grief. She had been told to suppress it, to let it fade naturally. But it hadn't faded. It was still there, waiting, useless because the baby who needed it was gone. But there was another baby now. A baby who was dying for the same reason Maya was dying, because they had both lost what they were meant for. Maya's hand reached for the door handle. Every rational thought screamed at her to stop. She would be fired. Arrested. Thrown out onto the streets with nothing. But the cry came again, weaker this time, and Maya's hand turned the handle. The door opened. Alarms didn't sound. No one noticed immediately because the staff was changing shifts. The doctors were arguing in the corner, and security was distracted by a phone call. Maya slipped inside, moving toward the incubator with her heart hammering so loud she was certain everyone could hear it. She reached the glass enclosure and looked down at the baby, Mr. Blackwood's daughter, the heir to $1 billion empire, lying helpless and fading. Maya's hands moved without permission. She unlatched the incubator. The baby was warm but limp, her tiny chest barely rising. Maya lifted her carefully, cradling her against her chest the way her body remembered, the way instinct demanded. And then she did the only thing that made sense. She offered what no machine could give. The baby's eyes fluttered open. Weak. Searching. And then, with a desperation that broke Maya's heart, the baby turned toward her and latched on. The world stopped. Maya felt the connection like electricity, raw, primal, right? The baby's breathing steadied immediately. Color began returning to her skin. Her tiny fingers curled against Maya's arm, holding on like she'd found exactly what she'd been searching for. Tears streamed down Maya's face, but she didn't make a sound. She just held this stranger's child and felt, for the first time in 2 months, like she had a purpose again. "What the hell are you doing?" The voice was a thunderclap. Maya's head snapped up to find Ethan Blackwood standing in the doorway, his face twisted with rage and terror. Behind him, security guards rushed forward, hands on their weapons. Doctors froze mid-conversation. The entire room descended into chaos. "Sir, step back. Get her away from my daughter." Security, restrain her. But Ethan raised one hand, silencing everyone. He stared at Maya, at his daughter in her arms, at the way the baby's breathing had steadied, at the color returning to her face. His eyes moved from the child to Maya's tear-stained face, and something flickered in his expression. Confusion, realization, desperate hope. "What did you do?" His voice was barely a whisper. Maya's throat was dry. She could barely form words. She wasn't sick. He was starving. Not for food. For... She looked down at the baby, who was now feeding peacefully, her tiny body relaxing for the first time since birth. "For this." Dr. Harrison stepped forward, his face pale. "Mr. Blackwood, this is highly irregular. We need to assess." "Everyone out." Ethan's voice was steel. Yow. Sir. Out. The room emptied in seconds. Doctors, nurses, security, all fled, leaving only Ethan and Maya standing on opposite sides of an impossible moment. Ethan approached slowly, his eyes never leaving his daughter. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see clearly but not close enough to threaten. Who are you? He asked quietly. Maya Collins. I work here. Housekeeping. You're a maid. Yes. And you just... He gestured helplessly at his daughter, who was now sleeping peacefully in Maya's arms, her tiny chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. You just walked in here and... I heard her crying. I understood what she needed. Maya's voice broke. I lost my own baby 2 months ago. My body, it hasn't forgotten. The silence stretched between them, heavy with grief and impossibility and something neither of them could name. Ethan stared at his daughter, watching her sleep peacefully for the first time in 3 days. Color had fully returned to her skin. Her breathing was strong. She looked alive. The doctors said there was nothing left to try, Ethan said quietly. I was watching her die. She wasn't dying from illness, Maya whispered. She was dying from loneliness. Ethan's jaw tightened. He reached out slowly as if afraid sudden movement might break the spell. His finger brushed his daughter's tiny hand, and the baby's fingers curled instinctively around his. Something in Ethan's expression shattered. A wall he'd spent decades building, crumbling in an instant. Don't let go, he said, his voice rough. Whatever you're doing, don't stop. Maya nodded, tears still streaming. I won't. And in that moment, neither of them realized they'd just signed a contract more binding than any legal document. One written in desperation, sealed in grief, and built on the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, broken people could save each other. Outside the nursery, security guards whispered urgently. Doctors made frantic phone calls. Mrs. Chin wrung her hands, certain Maya would be arrested within the hour. But inside that room, a billionaire and a maid stood together, united by a tiny life that refused to give up. The baby slept. And for the first time in 3 days, Ethan Blackwood allowed himself to believe she might actually survive. The penthouse transformed overnight into something between a fortress and a prison. Ethan Blackwood was many things, ruthless, calculating, brilliant. But he was not a man who left anything to chance. By sunrise, he had lawyers drafting contracts, security teams restructuring protocols, and medical staff conducting assessments while carefully avoiding any mention of what had actually saved his daughter's life. The official story was that a specialized treatment had finally worked. The truth remained locked behind confidentiality agreements and 8-figure settlements to ensure silence. Maya Collins sat in a leather chair worth more than her entire year's salary, holding a sleeping baby while lawyers explained her new reality. She had been moved from the service quarters to a guest suite on the residential floor. Her belongings, meager as they were, had been relocated without her permission. A 24-hour security detail now followed her everywhere. And the contract in front of her outlined terms that made her head spin. Full-time live-in caregiver, the lead attorney said, his voice clinical and detached. Compensation of $200,000 per year, plus medical coverage, housing, and a trust fund established in your name. In exchange, you will provide exclusive care for Mr. Blackwood's daughter until such time as alternative arrangements can be made. You will sign a non-disclosure agreement preventing you from discussing any aspect of this arrangement with anyone outside this household. You will submit to regular medical evaluations to ensure your continued ability to fulfill your role. And you will not leave the premises without explicit permission and security escort. Maya stared at the papers, her mind struggling to process. $200,000. A trust fund. She currently made $28,000 a year cleaning toilets and folding sheets. This was life-changing money. This was security she'd never imagined. This is ownership, she said quietly. The attorney blinked. I'm sorry. Maya looked up, meeting his gaze steadily. You're asking me to sign away my freedom in exchange for money. You're turning me into property. Miss Collins, I assure you. I want dignity. Her voice was stronger now, cutting through the lawyer's practiced responses. I want to be treated as a person, not a resource. I want my own space that I control. I want the ability to leave if I choose. And I want him, she nodded toward where Ethan stood by the window, his back to them, to understand that I'm doing this because that baby needs me, not because he's paying me. The attorney looked helplessly at Ethan. The billionaire turned slowly, his expression unreadable. He studied Maya for a long moment, this maid who had walked into his carefully controlled world and shattered every assumption he'd held. You want respect, Ethan said flatly. Yes. You want autonomy. Yes. You want to feel like an equal, not an employee. Maya hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Ethan's laugh was bitter. You're asking a man who controls everything to give up control. I'm asking a father to trust the woman keeping his daughter alive. The room fell silent. Even the lawyers seemed to hold their breath. Ethan's jaw worked, his hands clenching and unclenching. Maya could see the war playing out behind his eyes, the instinct to dominate battling against the terror of losing his child. Finally he spoke. Fine. Redraft the contract. Ms. Collins gets her own suite with a private entrance. She can leave the premises with advance notice and security. The non-disclosure stands. My enemies cannot know about this arrangement. But she'll be treated as... He paused, the word seeming to stick in his throat. As family. The attorney made notes frantically. Maya felt something loosen in her chest, not quite relief but close. She looked down at the baby who had started to stir, her tiny face scrunching up as she searched instinctively for comfort. Maya adjusted her, and the baby settled immediately, a small sound of contentment escaping her lips. She needs a name, Maya said quietly. Ethan's expression flickered. I know. Have you chosen one? No. He walked closer, his eyes on his daughter. Her mother didn't, we hadn't. He stopped, the sentence dying unfinished. Maya didn't push. She'd heard whispers from the staff. Mr. Blackwood's wife had died in childbirth. An arranged marriage. A cold union built on business alliances. No love. No warmth. The baby had been born too early, and the mother hadn't survived the complications. Ethan had lost his wife and nearly lost his daughter in the same week. Maya understood grief. She understood loss. She understood why this man's walls were so high. Lily, Maya suggested softly. Means pure. Innocent. New beginning. Ethan stared at his daughter and for just a moment his expression softened. Lily, he repeated. Then his walls slammed back into place, his voice turning cold and businesslike. Fine. Make it official. Lily Blackwood. He turned and walked out of the room without another word, leaving Maya alone with the lawyers and a baby who finally had a name. The days that followed established a routine that felt surreal. Maya lived in a suite larger than any apartment she'd ever rented, with a bedroom, sitting room and bathroom that featured a soaking tub she didn't dare use. Lily's nursery connected directly to Maya's rooms through a private door, allowing her to respond immediately when the baby needed her. Which was often. Every 3 hours, like clockwork, Lily would wake and cry, and Maya would be there, offering the comfort and nourishment that kept the tiny girl alive. Ethan watched from a distance, always present but never close. He would stand in doorways, observing silently as Maya cared for his daughter. Sometimes Maya would look up and catch him staring, his expression impossible to read. She learned his patterns quickly. He worked 18-hour days, conducting business from his home office through a constant stream of video calls and meetings. He ate alone. He slept little. He trusted no one. Except, apparently, the maid keeping his daughter alive. Security was suffocating. 2 guards stationed outside Maya's suite at all times. Cameras in every hallway. Biometric locks on all entrances. Maya understood why. She'd heard the whispers from staff about Mr. Blackwood's enemies, about corporate rivals who would do anything to gain leverage. But understanding didn't make it less claustrophobic. On the 5th day, Maya took Lily to the window overlooking Central Park. The baby was awake, her blue eyes, Ethan's eyes, staring up with infant curiosity. Maya talked to her softly, pointing out the trees, the people walking below like ants, the world that existed beyond these walls. Your father built an empire, Maya whispered. But he built a prison too. For himself. For you. Maybe for me now. She looked down at Lily, who yawned widely, her tiny mouth forming a perfect circle. But you're going to be different. You're going to know love. Real love. The kind that doesn't come with contracts and conditions. That's an interesting philosophy. Maya spun around, her heart jumping. Ethan stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable as always. She hadn't heard him enter. How long had he been standing there? I'm sorry, I didn't mean. Don't apologize for having opinions, Miss Collins. It's refreshing. He walked closer, stopping a careful distance away. You think I've built a prison? It wasn't a question. Maya swallowed hard but didn't back down. Haven't you? I've built protection. There's a difference. Is there? When protection becomes so absolute that it suffocates everything inside it. Ethan's jaw tightened. You don't understand my world. No, Maya agreed quietly. But I understand yours. She nodded toward Lily. She doesn't need a fortress, Mr. Blackwood. She needs a father. She's alive because of security protocols and careful planning. She's alive because I held her when she was dying. Not because of your protocols. The words hung between them, sharp and undeniable. Ethan's expression darkened, anger flashing across his face. But beneath it Maya saw something else, fear. Not of her. Of himself. Of failing. Of being vulnerable. You think you understand, he said quietly. But you don't know what's out there. What people will do for leverage. For power. He moved to the window, staring down at the city below. I have enemies who would take her in a heartbeat if they knew she existed. If they knew she was weak. She's not weak. She's a baby. In my world that's the same thing. He turned back to face Maya, and for the first time she saw exhaustion in his eyes. I can't protect her with love, Miss Collins. Love makes you vulnerable. I can only protect her with control. Maya felt unexpected sympathy rise in her chest. This man who commanded empires was terrified of the one thing he couldn't control, the helpless love he felt for his daughter. What happened to her mother? She asked gently. Ethan's expression closed immediately. That's not your concern. It is if I'm raising her child. You're not raising her. You're keeping her alive. There's a difference. Maya's sympathy evaporated. Is that what you tell yourself? That keeping someone alive is enough? She walked forward, holding Lily carefully. Your daughter is going to grow up. She's going to need more than food and shelter. She's going to need someone who sees her as more than a liability to protect or an asset to control. And you think you're qualified to provide that? A maid with no family, no education, no? I'm qualified because I lost everything and survived, Maya interrupted, her voice shaking with suppressed emotion. I'm qualified because I know what it means to love someone more than your own life. I'm qualified because when I heard your daughter crying, I didn't think about consequences or contracts or protection. I just acted. Can you say the same? The silence that followed was explosive. Ethan stared at her, his expression cycling through anger, shock, and something that might have been respect. Maya held her ground, her heart hammering, waiting for him to fire her or throw her out or... No, he said quietly. I can't. Maya blinked. What? I can't say the same. Ethan's voice was rough, stripped of its usual cold authority. When she was dying, I stood outside that room and did nothing. I made phone calls. I threw money at the problem. I fired doctors. But I didn't. I couldn't. He stopped, his hands clenching into fists. You walked through that door without hesitation. You saved her when I couldn't. So no, Miss Collins. I can't say the same. Maya had expected many things from Ethan Blackwood. Arrogance. Cruelty. Cold dismissal. But not this, not raw, honest vulnerability. She looked down at Lily, who had fallen asleep against her chest, oblivious to the tension surrounding her. She's going to need you, Maya said softly. Not your money. Not your security. The man underneath all that armor. That man doesn't exist anymore. I don't believe that. Then you're naive. Or maybe you're afraid. Ethan's eyes snapped to hers, burning with intensity. I'm terrified, he admitted. Every second of every day. Because I know what I'm capable of, and I know what the world is capable of, and I know that love. He stopped, the word seeming to choke him. Love is the weapon they'll use to destroy everything. Maya understood then. This wasn't about control. It was about survival. Ethan Blackwood had learned to view love as weakness because in his world, it was. Competitors would exploit it. Enemies would weaponize it. And he'd already lost one person he couldn't protect. Lily's mother, whoever she had been. Then teach her to be strong, Maya said. But don't teach her to be alone. Before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed urgently. He glanced at it and his expression transformed instantly, the vulnerable man vanishing behind the ruthless billionaire. "We have a problem," he said coldly. "Stay in your suite. Don't answer the door for anyone except my head of security." "What's wrong?" "Someone leaked information about Lily's condition. My enemies know she was dying. They know someone saved her." His eyes met Maya's with chilling intensity. "And now they're going to want to know who you are. What happens to Ethan in the penthouse? Who sent the assault team? Will Maya and Lily make it to safety? And what will Ethan become when he finds out who threatened his family?" The story of the billionaire, the maid, and the baby who refused to die continues.